as well. So what I want to speak about today is obviously just starting to prep for the exam. So we'll literally just take 20 minutes. I know that there are other collabs also happening. So I'm just going to take 20 minutes. I'm just going to run through what's going to happen in the exam, what to expect for the exam, just give you some sort of final tips of what, and then we're going to spend some other time later on in our other collab sessions unpacking it in more detail and just having a look at exactly what is expected for the exam as well. So this is just our starting point to sort of orientate ourselves with what the exam is going to look at. We do have a session again scheduled somewhere in November, if I remember correctly. It's like the 8th or the 9th of November, where we will go through the case studies. We'll go look at some of the theory in more detail. But for a starting point for this exam, you should remember that it is a written on campus exam. So I just want to quickly check. I think the slide says June because obviously it was also June, but let me just scratch that. Your date is obviously different. You're obviously writing in December. I see it didn't save the change. So obviously you are writing on campus, okay? Now some students have asked me, which campus am I going to be on? Where am I going to write, etc., etc. So I don't have all of that admin-y information. I just know that when you register for an exam, you select a writing center. So it might be a church building, it might be another campus, it might be another university's building that you are using in the town or the city, wherever you reside, where you live. If though you do have a problem, if you have no idea where you are supposed to write, please just send me an email. So obviously you can log a ticket as well, but you're also welcome to send me an email and then I can sort of escalate that on for you as well. So at this stage you should know which venue you are writing at and what time you are writing. But yeah, all the students will be writing in different parts, but they will all be writing the same exam as well. The exam is a closed book exam, so in other words you have to study for the exam. You're not going to take any books or any information into you, which is a little bit different to what you have been doing, because up until this stage we've been focusing on take home. So we find that when we write on campus, it's a big difference, it's a big shock to the system, if you will have that as well. So yeah, so we're going to focus on on preparing for what exactly is it when we are looking at this written on campus. What does it mean for us? What does it mean when we say that that we are doing? So Tash, it's not to say that all the exams are going to be written on campus, but slowly and surely they are incorporating more written on campus exams as well. So we're obviously starting, as far as I can sort of see the strategy, they're starting with the third years. So a lot of the third years will be writing on campus, and a lot of the numerical modules, so the accountings, the financial managements, the statistics, those sort of financial modules or the numerical modules are also written on campus. And slowly but surely most of the exams will be, next year we'll still have take-home exams and they'll phase in these written on campuses as well. But for your module BMNG 7321, so Business Management 3A, written on campus, written in your venue that you have selected, and you are going to be looking at Learning Unit 127. So there's two different facets that I always encourage the students to go through. The first one is to make sure you understand the learning outcomes or the learning objectives in each learning unit, okay? So in your module outcome, in your module guide, you've got all the learning units for the modules for learning for the learning units from learning unit 1 through to learning unit 7. So under each one, you've got a variety of learning objectives. So I always tell the students, as a starting point, literally take those learning outcomes and make sure you are able to answer or explain whatever is written in that learning outcome. Nothing that is beyond those learning objectives is going to get asked. So if there's something in the textbook and it's not listed in the learning outcome, it's not in the scope of what is examinable. So it's not going to get asked in the exam or in the test for future references as well. So the first starting point that you should be looking at is to take those learning outcomes, and you'll see on the next slide, that's exactly what I've done in preparation for the session. Take those learning objectives and ensure you are able to speak about them, ensure you are able to, to elaborate or to answer the question, if you will, on those learning outcomes as well. And then for this module, which I'm not going to touch on too much tonight, like I say, we'll do that in the next session, but there is also an exam brief that they have given us. So they have uploaded an exam brief under student materials. I can also put it in more resources folders. And in that, on that brief, they give us different case studies, and we're going to look at how to sort of answer questions based on those case studies. So it'll be like an essay question um, for the case study. So basically, they give us six different case studies, and we are going to get one of them in the exams as well. Okay, so we're going to look at all of them. We're going to discuss all the case studies, but we are going to get one of them in our exam. So at least we have a little bit of a prep that we can do before we get to the exam. We at least get, we at least get sort of a scene feel for which is going to be what the case study is going to be. And just from past experience as well, just like you've done in your assignment where you have written reports, it's going to be the same structure for your exam. So we can almost be guaranteed that the way you're going to write an exam is as if you were writing a report. So it's going to be a similar format to the assignment. So introduction, conclusion, and then the questions would be in the middle. So that's the type of sort of structure that we're going to be looking at for the exam. We will, however, go through some past papers. We will, however, check through some of the structures and sort of work through those case studies and try and analyze. Remember, I haven't seen the exam myself, but we can try and sort of estimate what type of questions can we gather from these case studies that we are going to look at. So first point, study those learning units, study those learning outcomes. Make sure you have a good solid answer or explanation for each one of those learning objectives that are listed in the learning guides, in the module guide. And then we're going to work through the essay type questions. So this part where we look at the essay types, we're going to leave until next week when we unpack those essays in more detail. The brief is there, we're going to unpack it, we're going to look at that. But for tonight, we're just going to do an overview of the learning units just to get you started as well. So so let me know if there are any other questions regarding the admin side of the test, etc., etc. Remember, your hands are going to be sore. We don't often write a lot anymore, so you are writing a long paper. You have to write quickly. Remember, you get 2 hours for the paper, which is that 2 hours goes super duper quickly if you're thinking about writing a full-on report for those 2 hours as well. So yeah, so just be prepared that you're going to be writing, and you're going to be writing quickly. So the first little part that we look at for Business Management 3A, we look at the concept of the strategies. What is strategy? How is strategy changed? So we're looking at definitions of what strategies are, the nature of strategy, and what is strategic management. So we look at, again, definitions of strategic management, looking at the link for strategy, trying to develop a test to see which strategy is a winning strategy for our organization. And we then look at the paradoxes. Very, very important to look at those paradoxes of them. So, when we have an emergent strategy and we have, you will remember the perspectives from your assignment, the inside out perspective, the outside in perspective as well. So go through all of those concepts that you would need. Remember, guys, we can't go through all the theory, but if there's something that you don't understand, just let me know, and I can set up a session to explain specifically the theoretical content for that. So you would have already looked at inside out and outside in perspective on it. So chances are maybe not going to come out in the exam if we had to think about it, but yeah, just read through it again. The test for a winning strategy, important to understand the test for a winning strategy. Have a look at how you can, understand what is going to be a winning strategy, and how do we know what can we do for the organization in order to implement that it is going to be a winning strategy or not. Okay, so looking at that and then focusing on the paradoxes. Okay, so you'll see in our textbook the very last section of the first chapter where they speak about the paradoxes. They list those 5 strategic paradoxes, past and future. Remember, the paradoxes is those opposites. So what was the strategic management in the past versus the future? What is a reactive approach to strategic management versus a proactive approach to the strategy? What is our intentional strategy versus an emerging strategy? So those are the paradoxes, the opposites that you need to be able to explain. But that's probably one of the most important sections of learning unit 1 that you would have there. So remember, the rest we've kind of all been examined on as well, but you can focus on tests for a winning strategy and those paradoxes for chapter 1 for learning unit 1. Once we have pardon me, once we have identified what is the strategy, we can now move on to how we can use that strategy in our sustainable organization. So you'll see that there's quite a lot of information in this chapter. Some of this information we have already again used in our assignment. So we've already spoken about shared value and inclusive business. So the chances of it being asked again are minimal, but just skim through it, have your assignment, just go through it once again as well. So out of that, that would be the most important part of learning unit 2. What does it mean to be sustainable as an organization? Why should an organization strive to be sustainable? What are the triple bottom lines? So what are the different P's? People, planet, and profit. How can we incorporate all 3 of these? How can we embed them all into our strategy in order for us to actually come to a place where we are not just making a profit, but that we are also taking care of the people, the society, as well as the planet? But those are probably the most common things that would be part of that learning unit. And like I say, a big one here that you have already focused on shared value and inclusive business, you've already answered in your assignment as well. But just read through that as well. Learning unit 3, we look at the strategic direction. So we look at the different links that our organization would follow. We look at the vision statements. We look at the mission statements of of the organization. So again, we have these 2 very big concepts part of learning unit 3. So you can see we don't have a lot of learning objectives, but we've got a big chunk of work: vision statement, mission statement, and those value statements as well, which are all connected in driving the organization in the direction that you need the organization to be. So again, we have looked at this in the past, vision and mission statements and value statements, but it is such a big part of business. We have found in the past that these questions have come up before again. So please do spend some time in learning unit 3. Please do look at, why is it important for us to have a vision statement? How do we know if it's a good mission statement? What are the questions we need to ask ourselves when we are saying, is this a good vision statement? Is it a good mission statement? Okay, so how do we write a good mission statement? You might get one of those case studies, one of the organizations, and get their mission, vision statements and analyze them. Is it good? Is it bad? So very similar to what you did with Naked with your insurance company. Now you are going to be doing it again. I'm not saying it is, but the chances are that it might come up again. So I know for the other ones we've said, it's not likely to come up, but we do often see vision and mission statements again in our big 120 mark exam. So don't just rule it out. Do spend some time again going through those questions, looking at a vision statement, understanding how you can identify and use the balanced scorecard. So how can you implement that within the organization to understand that you are going in the correct direction? So balanced scorecard, again, important in driving the organization within the direction that you want it to be in. Then we look at learning unit 4. You can see quite a lot of bullets or learning outcomes that we need. But again, not too difficult. We have looked at it a little bit in our assignments again. We've looked at the competitive intelligence, we've looked at business intelligence. So, again, two big concepts. Go over them again, understand them in detail. Look at the competitive intelligence. You've just done your assignment on that, so you understand the 5 steps of the competitive intelligence. Look at the business intelligence, look at the data. Look at ways in which we can use data and information in order to generate sales and in order to keep our business on the right track. Look at how we make decisions. Look at all the tools that are available. So look at our big data, look at our competitive intelligence and business intelligence as tools to aid us to make those decisions as well. So look at how we can extract the data, how we can use the data, how we can store the data, how we can use the source system. So that's also a question. If you look at source systems from page 120 sort of to 121, so that information again has come up quite a few times in the past exams where they speak about the different sources, data warehousing, and the data extraction. So do spend some time on those points as well. So I'll just quickly highlight them over here as well so that you know. People, processes, and technology. So this question, this bullet point has come up quite a bit when we look at it, and those are what we speak about when we are using the business intelligence. We are looking at the source systems, the data warehousing. We're looking at integrating the mechanism, our intelligence teams, and how we use our knowledge. So we manage the knowledge in the organization as well. So yeah, so that's quite a big chunk of work to sort of focus on. If you go on once again to page, so it goes all the way up until page 126, where we speak about the processes, the technology. How can we use the data in our organization to create a more competitive workforce? So quite a big chunk of work coming from Learning Unit 4. My advice would be to focus on those parts that we haven't covered in the assignment. So read through the CI cycle again and to have a brief understanding of what the business intelligence is, but spend some time unpacking people, processes, technology. Look at the data extracting, the data warehousing. So these bullets here that we haven't covered yet in our assignments would be important part of it. So they speak about the executive officer who's in charge of the information. They speak about the online transactions that record the data. So all of that harvesting of the data, how do we use the data to make decisions? All of that from these bullets that I've highlighted here would be where I would want you to focus. So if you don't have time to do everything, if you just focus on these 4, then I would be happy with Learning Unit 4 for that. Okay. If we look at Learning Unit 5, now we're looking at our environment. So our last few sections of chapter, we look at the macro, the micro, and the industry environment. So these are concepts that are not new. You've already you understand, and it comes up all the time, ladies and gentlemen, when we speak about PESTLE, we speak about the macro environment. Even if you had to go and study business management next year on your honors level or thereafter on the on master's level, MBAs, anything like that. Again, macro is so important. It's a concept that always comes up in business management again. So from this chapter, we are looking at our macro environmental factors. What is that? PESTLE factors. So we look at why the macro environment is so important, and then we go into detail to unpack our PESTI or our PESTLE factors. So again, something that that we understand now. You've done it many times. You know PESTLE. You should know it in your sleep, because business management is synonymous with a PESTLE, a SWOT analysis of what we're going to be looking at as well. So that's kind of the information that you've already understood. So you understand how you can look at the environmental factors. You know how the environment is structured, so you know the factors that form part of it. And then very, very important, make sure you are able to analyze those. Make sure you are able to use your SWOT analysis, to use the PESTLE analysis to analyze the environment as well. Okay, and then if we look at scenario planning as well as other issues matrix, just make sure that you are able to identify that those are also tools that we can use to identify any discrepancies or any changes in the environment that we need to react to. You'll remember that there were some limitations that were part of your assignment. Again, you can just read through those limitations. So very important from the macro environment, again, focus on SWOT, focus on PESTLE, issues matrix, priority matrix, and then focusing on how to analyze all those factors, how to do a scenario analysis and apply it to the case study. So again, it's not just going to be theory. If they include this question, they're going to take one of the case studies, let's say, for example, Pick and Pay, and they're going to say, do the SWOT analysis on Pick and Pay, perform a PESTLE analysis on Pick and Pay. Okay, so those are the type of questions that you would get, not just the pure theory, but the application based as well. So for those ones, the only two that we haven't covered would be the issues priority matrix. We haven't done an assignment on that yet, as well as the scenario analysis and planning. So those are the two tools that we haven't spent some time focusing on within the context of the work that we've already covered. So do spend a little bit of extra time going through the issues priority matrix as well as the scenario analysis and planning. So the sort of tools that we haven't covered in the assignments per se. Okay, so that's the macro environment. Then our second to last one, the industry environment. Remember, this is where we find the competitors. This is where we find everything that's in the working environment, the industry environment. Where do we see ourselves within the industry as part of it? So we need to be able to analyze the industry. Remember, if ever you forget anything to do with the industry environment, the word that I want you to remember is competitors. So in our industry environment here, we are analyzing our competitors. We are looking at the competitors around us. Okay, so we're looking at how are we performing in comparison to our competitors. So we're looking at all the relationships within the industry, and those are the relationships with our competition. How do we perform with the competition? How is the structure of the competition compared to us? What are some of the factors that the competitors are doing that we need to take into consideration? Okay, so remember, we've got our 5 forces here. Again, a very common term that we use in business management. Porter's 5 forces. We look at the rivalry between competitors. We look at new entrants coming into the market. We look at substitutes in the market. And then we also finally look at the bargaining power of the buyers and the suppliers. So again, ladies and gents, I'm urging you to go through Michael Porter's 5 forces, understand the 5 forces, be able to apply those five forces as well. So again, it's quite a common question. It has come up in the past as well, but it is quite a it is quite a common question to understand that competitive rivalry. What is the 5 forces within the business that you would have? Okay. Then just focusing on how we can analyze our competitors. So what is our competitor analysis? So if you look on page 199, how can we analyze the competitors in the industry that we find ourselves in? Okay, and then the last one that you need to analyze is to do a customer analysis. So focus on analyzing your competitors, understand the steps, and have a good idea of the principles in which you can analyze customers. So 5 forces from Porter here: competitive analysis and customer analysis. So I would say those would be sort of the most important things to focus on for learning unit 6. When we look at learning unit 7, remember now this is the last learning unit that we're going to be looking at, and obviously we are going to be focusing on the internal environment. So we're looking inside the environment. We're looking at how we can how we can look at our own capabilities, what are our own strengths within the organization. We are looking at how we can improve our own strengths and weaknesses. We're looking at how we can, get it, honestly, really just get things going within the own organization that we find ourselves in as well. So if we just go to look at that, remember we're looking at the resources, our dynamic capabilities, what are our strengths within the organization, what are our weaknesses. We're looking at how to analyze. So we look at, the ways in which we can analyze those things. So the strategic importance of it, using sustainability, using appropriability, exploitability. How can we get all our resources together, and how can we make the most of our resources? What is the difference between a tangible resource and a physical resource? So please understand the differences between the resources and understand the capabilities. So there are different types of resources, different types of capabilities. Understand both types of capabilities and then the resources. So be able to identify the types of capabilities and the types of resources that you would have for that. So that would be important to do there. And then just look again at some of the frameworks and the architecture within the business on how we set up these resources and how do we really use these resources to the best of our abilities as well. So that basically covers the content of what you need to cover. Like I said, there are some case studies that we will go through. I'm not even going to get into these case studies tonight. I'm just quickly telling you that there is the exam brief. There are those case studies that is important for you to understand. And obviously, you're going to write it in terms of a report. So you're going to look at how you can write it in a report, and then we can look at so just remember the structure for the report. Okay, remember to keep it keep it professional, keep it as you have been doing in your assignments. That's the kind of structure that they want: introduction, body, conclusion. That is what we are looking for as part of it. Remember, you don't need to reference. So these are the case studies that we will be discussing: discovery, fruit, MTN, Seattle, African extracts, as well as pick and pay, environmental responsibility. So that really is all from my side. I will share this recording just to go through this as well. And then, like I said, we have that other recording next week where we will unpack these case studies in more detail. So please make sure by then that you have gone through these case studies, have a look at them, go through them, and then we will discuss them in more detail as well. So, Stephanie, the exam is 2 hours long, but there is no word count for the report when it's a written exam. There shouldn't be, but there's also no way to count your words, so they don't really give you a word count. And definitely, Mackenzie, you can learn the work and write it exactly as it is in the textbook. Remember, you don't need to reference for your written on-campus exam. You don't need to reference for it. You can just write it as is. If you've learned the work sort of verbatim, that is okay for a written on campus. Obviously, you just need to make sure that you are still applying it, Yes, definitely, Rochelle. I will go and put them in the more resources folder. They are also on your student materials, but I will indeed go and put it on the folder as well. Um, thank you. Thank you for doing that, Steph. That's awesome. So I'll stay online. If there are any other questions, let me know. If not, go and get working. That's all good. And let me know if there's any other content that you want me to sort of prepare before our next session. Then I can really spend some time unpacking a specific area or content that you would need. Thanks, guys. Keep an eye out for those marks. Like I say, they should be released soon because I have submitted them. So they should be out soon. They should be verified soon. And good luck for the final stretch, everyone. Bye.